Welcome, everyone. You're watching In the Crosshairs. I'm your host, Raquel Okiai, and my special guest today is Anthony Calandro. He is a returning guest of ours and a friend and really a superstar, just in political, you are. So he's a founder and owner of Gun for Hire in New Jersey, and I want you to go ahead and give the viewers who don't know you a little background before we get into our discussion.
So my name is Anthony Calandro. In 1992, I started Gun for Hire, firearms training school in New Jersey. I now own the largest and busiest gun range behind enemy lines in New Jersey. I'm a Second Amendment advocate. I'm on 3 NRA committees, running for board seat this year. I'm a political activist. I go down to Trenton to our state house in New Jersey, and I put our politicians' feet to the fire every opportunity I can, because I'm not politically correct. I'm a libertarian at heart, and I'm going to fight for our rights because it's my calling in life.
Well, you do a really good job of it, and I know you have a radio podcast. Of course, the range, and I see you. I see you everywhere online, and you have an awesome presence. And I definitely love the politically incorrect. I try to do this. I do the same thing.
Good.
I am definitely not politically correct, so it's exciting to see you out there and working so hard and doing such a good job at it.
Thank you. You too. Keep it up.
You're welcome. Thank you. Thanks, Anthony. And I do want to stress to the viewers how important it is to reach out to your representatives at the state level. So going to the Capitol, even locally, really.
Yes.
If you live in a city and that your city council are putting together, gun control laws, that's something you can absolutely be a part of because it's very local, and you can go to council meetings and things like that. So it's very important to get involved. And also, if you don't want to get involved locally, it's important to get involved on a statewide basis or both. Because at the state level, I think that, the anti-gunners, they're working really hard to convince the politicians at the state level that gun control laws, are going to keep us safe, and it's the good thing to do. And they get, they catch people on emotion. Something tragic happens, they go running to the state legislature is really important because they will set the standard for the rest of the state. So I just want to encourage people to do that. I'm glad that you get to do that, Anthony. I try to do that in Tallahassee here in Florida. So there's so many things going on right now, current events. So we just had a very landmark, really, confirmation of the U.S. Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh last week. And it was after, I guess, about 14, 15 days of really constant grilling on this candidate, Brett Kavanaugh, and it created this big debate in the public. Everybody's talking about it. So it was, the Democrats don't want Brett Kavanaugh. They produced some accusations against him. And the Republicans, they support Brett Kavanaugh. He's the president's pick. We want to move forward, to the midterm elections, which are coming up in November. What is your take on all of this that's gone on?
The Democrats should have learned from their playbook with Trump. Trump at 70 years old was pretty much a liberal New York City guy, and he jumped on the Republican ticket, and he would have been a moderate president. But because of the constant attacks from the left, they pushed him probably further to the right than me right now. Schumer, Pelosi, Feinstein. And I think what happened was Kavanaugh, 15 years on the bench, has been middle, slightly right, constitutionalist. I think now, after these bitter personal attacks on him and his family, we have probably the most conservative justice we've ever going to see on the Supreme Court, because he's going to carry that anger for the next 40 years.
Is that good or bad?
It's good for me.
Yeah.
As a constitutionalist, it's good for me because we're hoping to get some gun cases to the Supreme Court. But the left is just unhinged with the personal attacks, accusations with no substantiating evidence or corroboration. They're just crazy, and they're digging themselves into a hole. I can't wait to see Kamala Harris and Cory Booker debating each other at the Democratic primaries in 2 years. It's going to be hysterical. Who can be crazier and to the left?
Yeah.
You know, other than the two coasts and a few city pockets in this country, the rest of America is not represented by these crazy people.
I agree with you there. Do you think that the Democrats, kind of the rank and file Democrats, do you think that they're taking a look at this sort of circus going on, accusations, no corroboration, you know, making people guilty before making them prove themselves innocent, which is impossible? Are they looking at their leaders, their Democratic leaders, and are they saying, yeah, I don't want to, this is out of control, I don't want to do this?
It is, but they have to follow this party narrative because the big funding comes from the repulsive, rich socialists. You know, the tech people in California, the Soros-funded money, Jeff Bezos, all of this, you know, and they own the Washington Post. They can think it, Raquel, but they can't act on it because they'll lose their base and they'll lose their money, the funding that's coming in. So everybody's on this crazy race to see who could be a bigger socialist, who could violate due process more and just create this mudslinging. It's probably we probably haven't seen a divide in this country like this since the Vietnam era, to be honest with you.
It is pretty divided. You know, and I think that the Democrats, I think it has galvanized the Republicans and has united them on this one issue. Like you said, it's almost like it pushed a whole bunch of us to be more conservative than we may have been, and definitely the president, which he has become, you know, quite the conservative. But when it comes to two-way, Brett Kavanaugh, do you think that we are going to be able to move forward with sensible rulings that return the rights, the Second Amendment rights, back to the people?
I'm really hoping so. The Supreme Court has rejected to hear the last three carry cases, two-way cases, post Heller and McDonald, where we're finally going to say, is it our right to carry a gun? Is the Second Amendment cover us to carry a gun outside the home? We still don't have clear language on that. And there's a lot of speculation on why the court hasn't picked up a gun case yet. Maybe because they felt they didn't have the votes with the swing vote with Kennedy. But now with Kavanaugh on the bench, we have a case, Cheeseman-Gillard in New Jersey, that we're trying to get to the Supreme Court. The NRA has a case in New Jersey. They have a case in New York. They have a case in California. It's a race to get a case to ratify this language on whether or not it is a Second Amendment right to carry a gun outside the home. So I'm hoping with Kavanaugh, with the court being 5-4 now, maybe they'll decide to hear a case. And if you think you've seen the left go crazy, wait until we get a Second Amendment case before the Supreme Court. Forget the Roe v. Wade thing. We're going to have people jumping out of buildings.
Yeah, they are going to come out in full force. And I think this was those two issues in particular, abortion and gun rights, are the main, are the two issues that either, you know, the Democrats support abortion and they're anti-gun. Yep. And they want, those are really the antagonizing issues that they didn't want Justice Kavanaugh to be appointed because of those really main issues. So I think everything else was smoke and mirrors. They were trying to do everything just to prevent Kavanaugh to get on the bench to make these conservative rulings in favor of gun rights and potentially, you know, restrictions on some abortions, you know. And I, you know, and that's fine with me. You know, I think that's a right conservative viewpoint.
You know, and they've really gone crazy over the abortion issue. Even if the Supreme Court was to hear an abortion case, it would have to start at a state level and work its way through the courts. It could be 4 or 5 years before a case comes up before the Supremes. The Supreme Court will probably change again. The balance will probably change again. It might go more conservative, but it might not. So it's not like there was an imminent case waiting before the Supreme Court. It was just a fervor that was built up by the crazy left, funded by the rich, repulsive socialists, to strike down Kavanaugh at all costs. And it backfired.
I think it backfired. I absolutely, yes. Do we see that in the polls anywhere? Like, are we seeing that, are Democrats losing? You know, yes. Is it true when the president said, we won, we like winning? Is it true?
Yes, the polls have shown swings in many of the close races, especially states where Trump had a majority of the vote in the presidential election. We're seeing pressure on these Democrats. Let's face it, there's like no voice of reason at the Democratic Party right now. There's no one coming out and saying, you know, we need to pull it back a little bit and focus on middle America. They're all in this massive race to see how far left they can go, again, because they need that funding to stay in office. You know, they need those donations. So I think it's good. It's almost like a vicious circle, and they're just gonna spiral out of control and disappear and become irrelevant. That would be my dream.
Right, and you know why the funding is so important? It's because they can buy the media, and they can spend their money campaigning and name recognition, and it really means a lot to them. So what you're saying is they're moving to the left as far as possible to bring in those big funders so that they can run a campaign. But guess what? They end up being beholden to those funders. So now, how are they going to operate? It's almost like Gillibrand in the U.S. Senate. You know, she was elected in New York. Or actually, at first she was appointed, and then she was elected.
She took Hillary's seat.
Yes.
Yep.
And Gillibrand was not this far left communicator. She basically had a reputation, a pro-2A reputation. She also had a reputation for being a moderate, or a conservative Democrat, and that's what got her elected. Because New York is a big state. It's not just based on city the city. And upstate voters are much more conservative than downstate. So Gillibrand gets in, and boom, she becomes like Chuck Schumer's, protege, and then she gets to get all that money from the big donors, the liberal donors, and oops, her philosophy, did a 360, and that was completely unfair to the voters. These are the kind of things that go on. So it's important to keep an eye on these characters, that do these things. So that they're collecting money from the far left Democrats, well, they're going to be doing far left things because they have to. And they're beholden to them, don't you think?
And they forget about their constituents. Jeff Flake in Arizona, who was voted in as a moderate Republican, he went so far off the reservation that he couldn't win in the next primary, so he decided to retire because he did not respect or represent his constituents anymore. Gillibrand is the same way. There's a few pockets there, like Kamala Harris can do what she wants to do in California because they're all crazy on the left coast, but you can't keep promising free stuff over freedom. Eventually, like socialism, you're going to run out of other people's money. Jeff Bezos and Zuckerberg and all of these rich, I call them oligarchs, out in Silicon Valley, they can't dictate what our country wants. Listen, when Hillary ran for president, she had the media and Hollywood behind her, Bon Jovi playing in concerts, and she still lost because middle of America knows you can't eat an iPhone app. Okay, somebody has to farm a product, somebody has to truck it, somebody has to process it. These people, these elitists on the coast, they're like, they sit on their gilded thrones and they think everything is just handed to them, like food appears magically. And they look down at their nose at us, working class people. So they could go out, our politicians can go out with all of these talking points they want. But at the end of the day, there's actually people out there doing the work. Even though they find us repulsive, they need us.
They do need us. I mean, we're the voters. And we have to, I think, make an attempt. It's very difficult for the grassroots, conservative-wise. It's sort of difficult to get, media play sometimes.
We can't get media play.
I'm a big conservative. Guess what? I got blocked on Facebook for 30 days.
Prison.
And it was about a post, a meme that I shared concerning the Ford lady, who made the accusations against Kavanaugh. And was it kind? Nah, no. It wasn't a kind meme. But why does Facebook have to block me for 30 days?
This is going to backfire. This is going to backfire on the masters of the universe. It's evident
they have that bias. Even Facebook, the social media site, has a bias against conservatives. It's not the first time this happened to me, too.
Correct. And Google and Twitter, it's going to backfire on them. If we see a moderate red wave, you're going to see the Senate bringing these oligarchs in, and these companies are going to get broken up, or they're going to get monitored, or there's going to be laws passed where you can't be an open platform and you can't censor stuff. They want to have it both ways. You know, we can't get blue check marks on Twitter as a conservative, but every crazy liberal can get a blue check mark.
Yeah, right.
It's horrible.
It's hard, but thank goodness we have the internet and, the alternate media that's out there, and there's plenty.
Like us.
We stick together, and, we hold tight. And I think it does filter into the general public, and it does filter into Democrats. And, Republicans, when it was Obama's turn to make appointments, the moderate Republicans, they had a hearing, they did their thing, but at the end of the day, they sworn in the president's pick, which is really the people's pick. So, if the people are going to elect, for instance, Obama, he's going to go and be able to appoint. Now, the Senate can confirm, can review and confirm and ask questions and put it out to the public. This is what we're getting. Is this, it's a public, it's a public institution. We get to see what's going on, how they're making the choices and stuff. And then now in 2018, and I think they're still fighting this case, in 2016, the president won the election, and President Trump is the president, and he gets to make these choices. And I think they were so adamant against the president that they forgot about their own message. If you want to be a Democrat, you have these ideas that are different than conservatives, will communicate them in a way that might be persuasive or might convince me. Let's have a conversation. Let's have a debate about it. I don't mind that. I think that's a democracy. But this hysteria about, bringing forward these crazy, people who know cooperation. There's so many things you could say. What happened 35 years ago, so you could say anything. Maybe I remember, maybe I don't. It's absolutely ridiculous, for the public to turn against Brett Kavanaugh based on the accusation. So I think Democrats are running away. And they're running to the Republican Party. I think that's going to happen. I hope so too. I want to get back to this this issue about Feinstein, because she talked about it during the confirmation hearings when she was questioning Brett Kavanaugh, and I want to know your opinion about it. She was saying that, since Heller, we understand that, common use firearms and common use are legal firearms. And common use would be something like, the public generally uses it. So the public uses semi-automatics fairly commonly in common use. Well, then that firearm should be protected. So Feinstein questioned Brett Kavanaugh on that issue, saying that anything can be deemed in common use, and that it wasn't right that she wants to ban, semi-automatic weapons, which she calls assault rifles. So what do you think about that? What would be your response to Dianne Feinstein for putting that garbage out?
Judge Kavanaugh's response was pretty awesome. He was trying to educate Feinstein that the AR-15 platform is the most popular common use rifle in this country, but she equates black rifle to assault rifle. She doesn't understand the difference between full auto or semi-auto, and that's one of the major gaps we have.
Do you think after all this time, she really doesn't understand the difference?
I think she doesn't understand the difference.
You think she doesn't understand? Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I think she doesn't understand the difference. I've seen many politicians talk. I get involved at the local and the state level, and they don't have a clue. They just hear the media narrative, the assault rifle, black rifle. But, Brett Kavanaugh, Judge Kavanaugh gets it, but she has an agenda. And you know what? Raquel, even if she does get it, she would never admit it, because she just keeps continuing to try to change the narrative. Like Obama said, it's easier to go online to order a gun than it is to order a laptop. I've had people repeat that back to me. And then I tell people, go out and apply for a gun permit and buy your gun and come back and tell me if it was easier to buy that gun than it was to buy a laptop. But that's what they know. They follow that narrative. So Feinstein can either be stupid or play stupid, but either way, she got airtime. with that debate with Judge Kavanaugh. But Judge Kavanaugh gets it, like all the right-leaning Supreme Court justices we have get it. And I think ultimately we are going to prevail. I don't care how loony the left gets, how much funding they have. We still have middle America that goes to work every day and pays their taxes, and we're fed up.
Yeah, and you know, it's expensive. You know, when the taxes keep getting higher and higher, basically the federal government is actually like, they're the mob. Yes. Because it's like bribery. So you work hard, you save your money, you build your business, and now you're giving the federal government a certain percentage of your business. Isn't that what the mob did?
That's what they do.
Go around the neighborhood and say, hey, give me a top off your profits because I'm going to protect you. Correct. Isn't that what? Okay, so we as a country, as an American, I want to keep the federal government just completely minimalized. The most minimal thing you have to do, but that's not what's going on, Anthony. What's going on is that they're so huge, and they're spending so much money, and where they're getting the money? Well, they're taking it from us, the hardworking people. I'm not saying that I don't want, that I don't feel, I don't mind contributing contributing my money to certain things that, for people that really need it, or, welfare, things like that. I really don't mind sharing a little bit, but what's going on in Congress is something totally different. And what would you, and I know you agree with me because I know you're a libertarian, but how do we get these politicians to realize that, this is not your dream job, that you just get to pontificate there and, blah, you're spending our money, and how do we get them to just become really, really small government? I think the founders envisioned it that way. Very small, especially on the federal level. How do we get the government smaller?
Jefferson is rolling over in his grave because he envisioned the federal government just for foreign wars. He didn't expect this, but now we have an extortion game. The federal government holds back federal funding to states if they don't follow federal guidelines. So we have an encroachment, and every year the federal government gets bigger, and every year politicians run on a smaller government platform, Republicans and Democrats. But the career bureaucrats, it will never change. They self-protect themselves, and the government gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and it seems like there's no way to escape it. The bureaucrats are all around us. These are the very people who are being subversive behind Trump too, because they want to maintain their jobs. So you need a few more businessmen in the cabinet, like Mulvaney and a few other people, to continue to cut the federal government down. It was not intended to be this way. It's extortion at this point. The federal government, on how they like New Jersey a few years ago, we changed the speed limit to 55 miles an hour, and we lost federal funding for that when they changed the speed limit to 65 miles an hour. So the federal government actually extorts state and local governments. Right. And as a libertarian, it pisses me off.
Yeah, that pisses me off too. When are you going to run for office?
I can't run for office. I have morals. I can't. I'd rather be the one poking the bear. It allows me and offers me a lot more freedom. I think I've said this many a times. I think 90% of politicians, when they're running for the first time, they have good intentions. But once you get in, it's all about self-preservation. And to win, incumbents have like a 92% reelection rate. To win, you have to start taking money from special interests, and you have to sell your soul. And you can't represent the people anymore. So it's not for me. I'd have to make deals with people that I find repulsive. I'd rather make fun of those people publicly.
Do you think term limits could solve some of those problems?
Yeah, I believe that we should have a 2-term term limit. The politicians will never allow it to happen, though. But I do not think it should be a career. Our federal politicians don't fall under Social Security. They have their own pension plan. They don't fall under our healthcare system. They have their own healthcare system.
Yeah.
It's Animal Farm. You know, how could this be? It's supposed to be a constitutional republic, and we're supposed to have a level of democracy. Yet they've exempted themselves from everything, and it falls on us. It should be 2 terms maximum, just like our president, and get out and go back and live under the laws that you passed instead of living exempt from the laws that you passed.
I know, exactly. Yeah, that's totally unfair. Do you think, I've seen some headlines that with Trump proposing that their pension or to stop paying them after they're out of office, things like that. Is that something that might move in Congress?
No, never happened. They'll posture on both sides, saying they're for it, but it'll never go anywhere. And then 6 months later, they'll give themselves a pay raise.
Yeah.
That's what happened.
Yeah.
They let us focus on a shiny thing while they're doing other stuff behind our backs. That's basically what's going to happen. It's all about self-preservation. We should not have people going into Congress with a net worth of $100,000 and leaving 30 years later with a net worth of $250 million. I don't understand how that happens.
Right.
And it happens more often than not. Our politicians go in poor and leave rich. Lobbyist money, their families get jobs. If you're in there for 2 terms, you can go in and make a change. Now, of course, there's an argument then you wouldn't have the Lindsey Grahams and the Orrin Hatches that have the power. Even look at Chuck Grassley, 85 years old, pretty smart lawyer. He handled the committee meetings pretty good. You couldn't do it if you didn't have a crass old guy doing it. Maybe a young buck wouldn't have done it as well. But then look at Jim Jordan. You look at some of the younger politicians. I think 2 terms and out, and there should be a public groundswell to push that. But our politicians and the special interest groups will fight that, because the special interest groups feel like, well, I got a lot of money invested in my politician. I don't want him to have 2 terms and get out. He's a long-term annuity for us and what we represent.
Yeah, that is very true. Just philosophically, I don't oppose lobbyists. I don't oppose groups that have, even single issue groups that, want to push certain laws, and that's what they want to do, and that's where they want to put their money into it. But I wouldn't mind seeing a limit placed on the amounts that actually go to these candidates, just because I'm trying to eliminate, this quid pro quo that goes on. So with combination with, pushing for term limits that they can't even make that investment, but also that they're limited to a certain amount. No matter how much money they have, I suppose, see what happens is that they do, the super PACs, and they do it in different ways. It really is a difficult problem that exists. But just concerning the midterm elections coming up, it seems really gloomy. However, I want to tell the viewers that I still think it's really important to be involved in politics. So it's a participative government. And if you can't get involved, or if you don't want to be involved directly, like run as a candidate, it's still very important for you to support candidates that you like and trust, that understand this point that, this isn't a career. This is something that, I'm going to serve the people. As long as they're serving the people, we're happy with you. But go serve the people, and don't serve big interest groups with all this money. So let's put some limit on the way that they fund, even in the super PACs. What do you think about that?
I agree. We treat politicians like they're our public masters, but they're really our public servants. They're supposed to work for us, but they hide behind the gates with their armed guards, so they're insulated. They don't live the same way we do anymore. But I do believe there should be a limit on lobbyist donations. The media is always quick to say how much the NRA has donated to politicians, but nobody ever talks about the pharmaceutical industry or the environmental industries like DuPont and Monsanto. we're talking about tens of millions of dollars and hosting parties and trips for these politicians and everything. So they don't represent the people anymore. They represent big business. I'd love to know how much Google and Facebook, with their charitable contributions and super PACs and through third parties, they also tell employees to make $2,700 donations, the maximum donation, and then they'll reimburse them in comp time or whatever. It's tens of millions of dollars in the machine. But you were talking about getting involved. I'm involved in politics at the state level. I'm involved at the county level and the town level. And I am a politician. I was elected January to the county Republican committee. So I go
Congratulations.
So I go to Republican committee meetings, and we help out a lot. We support candidates, like we're supporting Jay Weber right now. But you have to, our politicians get comfortable. You have to go to their offices. You have to email. You have to write. You have to call. Their staff record those calls. They'll record, oh, Raquel called, yay. Anthony called, nay. And then they show it to our elected officials, and they say, listen, we got 700 phone calls for, we got 300 phone calls against. Just want you to know. They have to listen to our opinion. Most people, I think, complacency in our country now, you hear, my vote doesn't matter. Oh, I don't care. I'm not involved in politics. And I'll have people come to my gun range and complain about the 10-round mag ban, and then they'll tell me they didn't vote. They didn't vote in our election, our gubernatorial election. As soon as they tell me they didn't vote, I don't want to talk to them anymore. I'm like, I'm done with you. New Jersey, we're outnumbered 2-1 Democrats over Republicans, but we have more independents. And the independents are the swing vote in the state. And that's how Governor Christie won 2 terms, by garnering the independent vote. And in New Jersey, our last election for Governor Governor Phil Murphy, only 37% of registered voters voted for our gubernatorial election. That's atrocious. 37% of the people. So don't tell me your vote doesn't count. Get out there, get energized, make your voice heard. Listen, I handwrite letters to our politicians too, our local councilmen and everything. I always get a response back. Whether it's a canned response or not, I get a response back. I'll thank them for their support, and I'll critique them for something else. I've gun for hire letterhead and everything, and just a hand note, 1 or 2 sentences, fold it up, throw it in the mail in a stamp, just to let them know I'm watching.
Yeah, it means a lot. Because, even though on their mind is re-election, but who's going to re-elect them? The voters. So when they hear from the voters, they really have no choice but to listen. They have to listen. Even if you're in important issues important to you, and you go to your state capital, and you go with a group of people, and you're like, hello, yeah, I don't support you on that bill that you're trying to pass in the state house. So what are you going to do about it? Oh, by the way, these are my friends, and they vote too. Now they're going to be like, oh, okay, let's talk. You have to. And so if you're not participating and you're sitting back home, you're watching TV and you're eating popcorn, you're like, nah, it doesn't matter. My vote doesn't matter. It does. It does. And, you don't have to be engaged, watching Fox News every day like some of us do. But you can be engaged with your local politicians, who's running, maybe you want to get involved, maybe you want to, help out the candidate, volunteer, and go and show up and vote on election day. I want you to give the listener or the viewers advice as to how should they be looking into the next election, and how do you think that they should go to the polls as voters?
I think everybody should get at least one friend to go vote, make it an outing, go to the polling station and vote. I really think if we want to continue to follow Trump's agenda, which, let's face it, Trump's agenda is the people's agenda, building a wall, lower taxes, et cetera, instead of expanding the government, everybody should get a friend, at least one friend, and go out and vote with your conscience. There are some Democrats out there that deserve our votes. There's some, right-leaning Democrats in some free states like Tennessee, let's say. But vote and get everybody out there, get everybody energized. I believe this is a pivotal election that could set the course of our country for the next 30 to 50 years, to be quite honest with you. Because if the Democrats gain control, we're going to go back to getting nothing done.
I watched the president's speech on Saturday night. He was in Kansas. And the crowd was really pumped up because the same day that Brett Kavanaugh was confirmed. And the president was really live. I thought it was a great speech. He was really lively.
Yeah.
He was counterpunching. He was being politically incorrect. I mean, he had it all going on, I think, the president. He talked a lot about his accomplishments since he's been elected to office, including, international relationships, Korea, also talking about the trade agreement with Canada and Mexico. And he said that he's bringing jobs back to America, that things are different. So you can't be a big corp and go ahead and get, cheap labor somewhere else without paying taxes back to our country. Is all that, what do you think about that? And do you think it's resonating with the American people as a positive? The question I want to ask you is the president exaggerating, or is this what's going on?
Well, he's a New Yorker and he exaggerates a little, which is okay. If the media was neutral to our president, his approval rating would be 70% instead of 50%. If the media was positive to our president, his approval rating would probably be about 90%, and his unapproval rating would be 10% by the lefty loons and the socialists on the other side. But he is right. China is scared of us right now. He created this trade deal with Mexico. Canada didn't want to sign on. Last minute, they blinked. He's a great negotiator. He's working on North Korea. I don't know where that's going to go. I don't know where it's going to go with Iran, but he definitely put them on notice. Cutting funding to the UN. We're only going to give money to countries that, that like us. Like I said, stop funding the UN and let them hate us for free. There's no reason to pay them to hate us.
They do that anyway.
Right?
That's true. Yeah.
So correct. So if the media would just give up a little bit, but the media needs him as their foil because it's good for their ratings. Because let's face it, the only people that watch those stations are the people that are all the way on the left that you can't negotiate with and you can't reason with. So he's doing a great job, and he continues to focus on it in the face of adversity and being attacked every day. And eventually, I mean, even Joe Scarborough started coming out and started saying positive things. He said, whoa, those are some low unemployment figures, 3.7%, lowest in 49 years, job growth numbers. You can't hide these things. For the first time, we have a president, since Reagan, we have a president that's not a globalist. Both Bushes were globalists, this whole new world order crap. Forget that. We can't take care of anybody else unless we have our house fixed, right? You and your family can't donate to charity unless you're paying your bills. In this country, we borrow money from other countries to give it to countries that hate us. It's asinine. And again, it's because of special interest and politicians with a global interest. He's not a globalist. And he's a populist president, and forget that new world order. And that's why he's hated so much by the Soros types and the big business machine and the media machine. So we need to get more politicians elected who are going to support our president going forward in 2019. So everybody get out there and vote.
Yeah, it's good advice. The way I look at the president is, people, I grew up in Queens County, same county Trump is from. And when someone is going to shell it out, and someone's going to shell it out against you, they're going to be talking crap about you behind your back. Well, you know what? You're going to shell it right back, right? Because that's like Queen's logic. I've been wanting to say this. I can't say it on Facebook because I'm blocked. But it's absolutely like something like we sort of live by. So Feinstein, some of the other Senate Democrats, they're on there in the public and they're slamming the president. They're slamming him. They call him an idiot. They really like hating on him. And Trump's like, oh really? It's my turn. So I don't see anything wrong with that. I think that I see that as very, very normal. So if you're going to start attacking me, I am not sitting back. And I don't blame the president for being very vocal, and it's funny. I think it's funny.
So do I. He does. And when he gives you a nickname, it sticks.
Of Yeah, he's the president. It's great. I was watching him live when he was doing not live, but on TV, while he was giving the Kansas speech, and I was just ear to ear and a big smile. It was just like, yes, go Trump. And I have to concur with you that he is not a globalist. I don't see that either. I see him as a populist. He is focused on jobs and opportunities in the United States for Americans, and that's important because we are America and he's the president. So we don't want him focused on other lands and other countries and meddling and all of that stuff. We want to focus right here in America. And if that's what he's doing, I'm happy with it.
I'm happy with it too. We need to take care of our own house and our own people. We have seniors that can't afford to live. We have homeless people. We have veterans that we treat like, the family redheaded stepchild. It's horrible. We should be taking care of our seniors, our veterans, our homeless, the drug addictions that we have in this country. And then we can worry about other countries. Everybody has their own problems, but the left is unhinged. This whole thing where we should have no borders and mass migration. How do we support that? No, nobody can think about that. Jim Carrey is a communist and a socialist now. Well, he should fess up and he should take his money and share it with everybody. But that will never happen. That will never happen because they're all hypocrites. I hate hypocrisy. I'm the first one to tell you I am not a hypocrite. I will tell you exactly how I feel, whether you like it or not. These people are hypocrites.
Yeah, and they have been, and it definitely showed during the confirmation hearing of Brett Kavanaugh. The idea that, sexual abuse is something very serious. It's a crime. It's 100% a crime, and none of us, trying to promote violence against women or anybody. We're certainly not doing that. But the left have picked that, chosen that issue with sort of top issue, Me Too movements, kind of like a popular slogan, and they want to place that on Brett Kavanaugh. It's so unfair. It's like against humanity. It's and this is not anything new. So we know, when we read in high school To Kill a Mockingbird, we know that, particularly the African Americans were being falsely accused of raping women, white women. So all it took was a white woman, maybe they wanted, I don't know. All it took for a white woman was to make an accusation, and the black kids were, the black man was going to get hanged. That's not my country. That's not an America I want to live in. It's the same thing. You remember Justice Thomas, Clarence Thomas, when he was going through his hearings, and Anita Hill was also complaining about him. What he called it was a modern day lynching. Yep. A modern day lynching. And that was no different that went on here against Brett Kavanaugh. He's not the poster boy for abuse. Nobody, don't make him that. It's this, they do it to the NRA, the anti-gunners. They wanted me to create some type of scapegoat for, hey, I don't mind holding people accountable. If some wackadoo shoots up the school, I want that person held accountable. I want them in jail, and I want them to go to trial, and I want them to be held accountable. If a violent crime occurs, a sexual violent crime against a woman, I want that person who did it to be held accountable just like everybody else. We all have channels to go through. We have law enforcement agencies. We have local, police department, sheriff's office, district attorneys. There are ways to go and catch a criminal, catch somebody who did harm to you. No, the liberal Democrats aren't above the law, right? So they don't just get to make an accusation and then you go run and hang the person. It's entirely unfair. And I think the Democrats, if they're paying attention, they look at this and say, yeah, that was really not right. What was behind all of this attack on Brett Kavanaugh with this stellar record that he had? 50 to 75 women came out. They wrote a letter to the Senate committee and they spoke about him, knowing him personally, whether in high school or they knew him from clerking for him as a judge, or working with him in the Bush administration. And these were women that knew his family, had played with his kids. He's a volleyball coach, all these kinds of awesome things that he's done in his life, and to be smeared like that, I think was really completely unfair.
But
glad it's over though.
Yeah, But the left doesn't
You know, I couldn't post on Facebook, and I had so much to say. So I've been the second time last week on In the Crosshairs. That's all me and Dan Roberts we talked about was the Brett Kavanaugh hearing, because I have so much to say. But you know what? It's over, and I'm glad it's over. And I think America jurisprudence for the next forever is really a winner, and I think they're going to benefit a lot. I think we are going to benefit a lot by this Supreme Court justice. I'm very, very happy about it.
Yes, but the left is not going to learn from this because they have the media behind them and they have the money behind them. They're going to double down and they're going to go further left. You'll see. It's not over. You know, Trump has a few hundred nominees that for lower stuff, other government jobs that the Democrats keep holding up in the Senate for appointments. You know, asking for more information and not asking for closure and stuff. So it's going to be a difficult situation still, because they don't get it, because they watch their own media stuff. They live in their own bubble, so they still feel that they're righteous. So they're going to keep doing what they do until they become irrelevant, I feel.
And they will be irrelevant. And I'm going to give them some advice. What the Democrats have to do to recover from all of this is to produce better candidates. They have to bring forth somebody with real ideas, real hope, not fake hope, like not hope and change. Don't get me confused with that. But I'm just talking about put forth a Democrat that believes in America, that doesn't want all the illegal immigrants to come in, that doesn't want to take away your Second Amendment rights. Pick somebody that, find somebody in the party, and I'm sure they're there, who doesn't want big federal government, who's a conservative, a blue dog Democrat, potentially, but somebody that speaks to the American people and doesn't speak to the hard left. I'm tired. The hard left doesn't represent me, and they don't represent the majority of Americans. But because they have that stranglehold on the media, it sort of appears like they are in such control, but they really aren't. And that's why voting matters, as Anthony was talking about earlier. Go and vote. It really does matter, because the hard left have to be kind of told a lesson. Stop going out there with your pals in the media, blowing smoke, and being hypocrites, as you said, which they are. I'm pretty much sick of it. And while I'd like to think the confirmation is over, you're absolutely right. I'm going to stay on guard because they're not going to go away. They're still going to be here. So this has been a fantastic show. Thank you so much for having this with me so I could talk about my politics. I feel so censored. Not being on Facebook. I got like 15 more days. Anyway,
you're in Facebook prison.
But you all can follow me on Twitter. So that's Raquel Okiai at RQ Politics on Twitter. So I have been, I've been there every day, making up from not being on Facebook. But this has been a fantastic show, and I just thank you so much. You really are a superstar. I follow you everywhere. I think you're a fantastic communicator of all things positive for two-way rights and also for conservatism. So I want to let you have the last word.
Thank you for having me on the show. I love following you as well. Keep the political commentary up. We need more fighters like you. If you want to find me, just Google gunforhire.com. Drop me a line or a message, and I'll share my political incorrectness with you. Have a great day.
It's so nice seeing you again. See you later.
Be safe, Raquel. Have a great day.
Thank you.